a train in the jungle where there are no tracks, a foiled plan to blow up bridges in Iredell County. What else can we learn from this guy? Stick around, guys. We're going to talk about who is David Benbow. Well, good morning, David. It's good to see you this morning.
Good morning, Luke. Good to see you.
This is something that, as I was thinking about it, getting ready, coming in, I was like, man, what an opportunity to talk to somebody like you who's been through so much and to get it down for everybody out there to see, not just today, but this will be around forever. And what a story that you have to tell and an experience you've had. It's just really a cool thing to be able to sit here and talk with you today. So thank you for taking some time to come in and chat.
Sure. Thank you.
So we got a lot of ground to cover, and we don't want to be here all day because we could be. You and I have had some great conversations.
Yeah.
But let's start kind of at the beginning. So you were born in Washington, D.C., right?
Yes, I was. And my father was overseas in World War II, and my mother was living with her grandparents, or with her parents, my grandparents, in Washington while Daddy was overseas, and so I was born there.
Yeah, and we've got, with your grandfather, he kind of was a prophet. We found out just this recently, right?
Right. Yeah, I was going through some of my stuff in my desk, and I found a letter from my grandfather addressed to little David, and I was only 9 months old. And he said that he was writing me a letter because my mom and my dad had returned home from the war, and my mom and dad had just left Union Station going to North Carolina. And my grandfather wrote that I had been making sounds, trying to talk and that sort of thing. And he said that when you said he wanted to expect you to continue working on your talking, because when you grow up, you may be a big lawyer and be making lots of speeches as a result of your early practice.
And boy, how true was that? So you are one of our partners at Benbow, Davidson,
Yes.
and Martin. And in fact, the founding partner.
Yes.
So we kind of owe all of our careers and our success to you and the groundwork and the foundation that you laid. So.
Well, it's a team. It's a team effort and has been. And there's so many folks that work together there at Benbow, Davidson, and Martin. And so two heads are better than one, and we've got 5 attorneys and an outstanding support staff of paralegals. And so it really takes a team effort.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it sure does.
Yeah.
It sure does. And that's one of the things that I remember learning from you early on whenever other attorneys would call in, even before, during COVID, the thing everybody would say is we're all in this together. But you were saying that a long time before COVID. I mean, one of the things I remember about practicing with you early on was when attorneys would call in and say, hey, I've got a problem, can you help me? That's what you would always say, hey, we're all in this together. I'm here to help. And that's kind of become our slogan.
Well, it has, and when another attorney calls and has a problem, wants to talk about it, in fact, I've taken several attorneys up to your property up there. It's a beautiful mountain that you live on, a hillside with a gorgeous view. And we've gotten hamburger at Chuck's. Some other lawyer wants to talk, and go up there and just sit and talk a little bit.
Yep. Well, I've heard you say before, as we kind of get back into how you got here and the path you've taken, you didn't make it very far in life, did you?
No, I didn't. No, I grew up a couple of blocks from our law office.
Yeah.
So, but it's familiar territory.
Yeah. That's one of my favorite things that you've said, because in reality, you've traveled probably as much or more than anybody I know with all the experiences you've had. So tell us about, you went to school here in Iredell County, and then what? Where did it go from there?
Well, I enjoyed going to school here in Iredell County. Davie Avenue School, which is where the jail is, D. Matt Thompson Junior High School, then Oakwood Junior High School, and Statesville High School. And then went to the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. And when I graduated there, it was 1967, and we had a draft, and we had a war in Vietnam going on. But I'd always wanted to go into the Army. My father had been in the Army in World War II. He was a combat engineer in Europe, and his only brother was in the Army Air Corps. His sister was was a nurse in the Marines, and so we had talked a lot about the military. And in fact, when my father would put us kids to bed, sometimes he'd sing one of his favorite songs called Bloody War. And so these songs that we sing to our kids when we put them to bed, you got to, expect that they're going to have an effect. I used to sing Jesus Loves Me and Jesus Loves the Little Children and Hark the Sound of Tar Heel Voices. And so my son Marshall ended up going to Carolina and becoming a preacher. So these songs have an effect.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. So you signed up.
I signed up.
Expected to go to Vietnam, right?
Well, everybody was going there.
Yeah.
And I went to Fort Dix for basic training and then advanced infantry training. And while I was in advanced infantry training, it was an 8-week course. 5 weeks into the advanced infantry training, they called us all together and said, boys, you're all going to Korea. And so some of these guys started high-fiving saying, man, we dodged Vietnam. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, why are we going to Korea? And I found out the North Koreans had just tried to assassinate the South Korean president by sending a 31-man commando team through the DMZ. They got all the way to within a mile of the South Korean president's house before they were intercepted. And then 3 days later, the North Koreans captured a U.S. Navy ship called the Pueblo. They killed a sailor and captured all of the other sailors and took them prisoner for 10 months. And so those are acts of war. And so we thought we were going to war in Korea. And they sent us all immediately to Korea.
Yeah, yeah. And some folks would think that that was a blessing and she dodged a bullet. And I guess you maybe did by not going to Vietnam. But Korea was hard in and of itself, wasn't it?
It was. We had a lot of times I'd tell people, I was in the Army, I was in Korea, and they'd say, well, you're too young to have been in Korea. I said, no, we had 50,000 American troops in Korea in 68 and 69 when I was there, 500,000 in Vietnam. And they'd say, what you had said people might say is you were lucky you didn't go to Vietnam, and maybe I was, because a lot of people died over there.
Yeah.
However, it just depends on where you were and when you were there.
Yeah.
And out of my platoon, we were short on men because of Vietnam. But out of my platoon, we'd usually have as low as 20 and maybe as high as 30 guys just in 3rd Platoon in Charlie Company. And out of those 20 to 30 men, 6 were shot in the summer of 68 and 2 of them died.
Wow.
And so those odds are, the odds go up there when you're in the DMZ.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, so you've always told me about the train in the DMZ. So you got to tell everybody about this train in the middle of nowhere.
Well, my first night ambush patrol, we'd go out in the DMZ for 24 hours. Go out about 4 in the afternoon and sit around somewhere. Of course, we'd have security out, but we'd eat supper and then wait till it got pitch dark. And once it got pitch dark, we'd move into our night ambush position. And I remember moving into our night ambush position, we came down off of a hill and we were headed toward our night ambush position. And all of a sudden there was this huge rusty train locomotive engine just right there. It had trees and vines growing out of it, and the moon was shining on it. And I just knew there was some North Korean sitting there watching me.
Oh, yeah.
But it was eerie, and it was scary, and I never will forget that. So that train had been shot up during the Korean War, which was 1950 to 1953, and it just sat out there in the DMZ. The tracks had been removed. There were no train tracks there. It did go through a cut in the hill. The train tracks formerly went through a cut in the hill, which we called Ambush Alley.
Sure.
And we would not, when we would be out there, we would try to not walk through Ambush Alley. We'd go up the hill and down rather than walk through there because it had sides and you couldn't really maneuver if you were caught in an ambush there.
Absolutely, yeah.
So
you served in Korea. One of the things that I had written down to talk about was baseball. Because if anybody who knows you love baseball.
I do.
Has that always been the case? Did that start early on, or?
Started early with my grandfather, who took me to my first major league game in Washington, D.C. when I was about, 8 or 9. And saw the old Washington Senators that play the Detroit Tigers. Excuse me. And he used to, when he moved to Statesville, he would still get the Washington Post and save the sports sections for me so I could read about the Senators. But I will, even though I can't remember my first court case, I do remember the first time I ever pitched a baseball.
Oh.
And that was in Washington. I saw some kids playing ball, and my brother and I borrowed their gloves and ball when they went into lunch. And I thought it was the most fun I'd ever had in my life. And I just loved pitching baseball. It's just relaxing. And so I played Little League, played Babe Ruth baseball, and then I was the one of the worst pitchers ever at Statesville High School.
Well, I was going to ask you about your home run record.
Yes, I did. Not many people know that I did set a home run record at Statesville High School. And the home run record was for allowing the most home runs by a pitcher. So it was not pretty.
It's like the Kenny Rogers song with the little kid. and
Yeah,
the ball
that's
bat.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You got to be proud of something. So,
Yeah.
so you came back from Korea and went to law school at Chapel Hill. And then you actually started practicing in Graham, correct?
I did. During the summer between my second and third year of law school, I got a job with a law firm named Ross Wood and Dodge, and that summer, and then that parlayed into a full-time job after I graduated from law school.
And when did you come to Statesville?
75. I graduated and was licensed in 72 and practiced law in Graham for 3 years. And I tell people I learned how to stand up and sit down in court.
Sure, yeah.
And I remember I do remember my first jury trial in Graham. And I was representing a guy that was charged with driving with his license revoked. It's not the world's most serious case, but it was serious to him.
Sure.
And so after he testified, and I put on some witnesses that said no, he wasn't driving. And the judge was a rough judge named Judge Pugh Bailey from Raleigh. And after the jury found my client guilty, Judge Bailey said, "Mr. Benbow, call your witnesses back up here to your table." I said, "Yes, Your Honor." He said, "I'm going to find that they perjured themselves, and I'm locking them up." So he locked my witnesses up for a day because he thought they had lied on the witness stand. Later, when I remember the guy's name, Isaac. When Isaac got out of, he had to do some jail time. When he got out of jail, I saw him on the street, and I said, "Isaac, you've done your time. They can't charge you with this again. Tell me the truth. Were you driving that vehicle?" He said, "Mr. Benbow, I swear I was not driving it."
Oh,
and I
no.
felt awful. I felt awful. I felt like I was a new lawyer. I didn't know what I was doing, and I felt like I was the reason that he went to prison.
Yeah.
Who knows? You try it 10 times, maybe he'd be found guilty 5 and not guilty 5 more. But I do think experience counts.
Yeah, absolutely.
I tell people when we went on patrols in the DMZ, we didn't want a new guy up front as point man. We would want an experienced person who knows what smells are normal, what smells mean danger, what sounds are normal, what to look for on the ground as you're walking, and that sort of thing. And it's the same thing when you're going through a legal situation, whether it's court or whether it's planning, subdivision or buying a home. You want somebody that's been there before. I don't know that you'd want heart surgery by a surgeon it's his first surgery, and the same thing with an attorney. So I think you need to, when you're looking for an attorney, I think that's something that you need to look for. And of course, the older I get, the more I emphasize experience counts.
Experience is what matters.
That's right. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, so I was thinking, as you were telling that story, I was remembering the first time I saw the movie Lincoln Lawyer with Matthew McConaughey. He said something in that movie that before I was an attorney, I never understood, but now I do. And and I can't remember exactly how the line went, but it was something like, "There's nothing scarier than having an innocent client."
Oh, God.
Because like, man, this guy's life is in my hands, and we got to win. We got to win this.
Yeah.
If you know your client's guilty, it's like, well, we're going to do the best we can and mitigate the sentence or whatever that comes out of it. But man, if they're innocent, golly, that's a burden. It really is.
It is tough when the client has done something really bad, and I have struggled with that from time to time. But the court is an adversarial system, and the one side puts on their evidence, and then you put on your evidence, and if it's, we always want to try to work something out if we can, but you can't always work something out. I remember one time I had a bank robbery case in federal court, and the guy, he just would not plead. I tried to get him to enter a plea, and he would not do it. It turns out he had picked up, after he robbed the bank, he had picked up hitchhikers. They were there to testify, and they said, yeah, he had yellow dye all over his hands.
Oh, no.
and there was money in the back seat. And so here I was. I had to argue to the jury why they should find this guy not guilty. And I argued reasonable doubt, and they found him guilty. So
yeah, sure.
In this interview, I'm 0 for 2, aren't I?
Well, that's okay, because there's probably been a lot that have gone the other way as well.
There have been one or two of them.
One or two. Well, we, as you think about some of the things that you've done in your career, it's really cool for me to think about your service in Korea, and then your service as an attorney, and then turning that and how you helped Korean veterans. So tell us about veterans who served in Korea, and you got involved in that. Was that the early 90s?
Yeah. I held a reunion for Korean DMZ vets in 93 in Statesville. A guy came and brought a declassified document. It had been classified for 25 years, 1968 to 1993. It had just been declassified, outlined the spraying program of Agent Orange and Agent Blue in Korea along the DMZ.
Sure.
And I'd never heard of that. I had seen defoliant being hand sprayed around our foxholes and along the barrier fence and guard post Gladys, where we would spend 4 days at a time out in the DMZ. But I was glad they were spraying, because I wanted the bushes to not have any leaves. I wanted to be able to see those North Koreans.
Sure. Yeah.
But when I started hearing, and I'd never heard of Agent Orange, but when I got back to the States and started some years after Vietnam ended, started hearing about Agent Orange and the problems it had. It just showed Agent Orange being sprayed out of helicopters and airplanes, and we didn't have helicopters and airplanes up in the DMZ. I just never put 2 and 2 together. So when I found that out, I wrote to my congressman, I got nothing. I wrote my senator, got nothing. I wrote Admiral Zumwalt, who was in charge of a Agent Orange commission. He sent my concerns to a senator. I heard nothing.
And this is important, because at the time, Agent Orange coverage wasn't offered to Korean veterans, right?
Absolutely not.
So if you had symptoms of being exposed, you were just SOL.
You had to have been in Vietnam.
Yeah.
And the Department of Defense and the VA did not acknowledge that it was sprayed in Korea, and I had proof right there with the declassified document. So finally, I wrote every member of the Senate Veterans Affairs Committee and every member of the House Veterans Affairs Committee, and I hit the right button. And a congressman from Illinois named Lane Evans had been a Marine, and he said, we need to look into this. So he held a hearing. Admiral Quigley came and testified and said, yeah, we sprayed Agent Orange in Korea, but we never kept it a secret. And I thought, well, baloney.
Right.
You never told me, and I was there, and you're not telling now. You're not putting out, news articles and that sort of thing. And these folks need to know. I didn't have anything wrong with me, but some of my buddies did. So they got the Veterans Department of Defense found, we sprayed it, and the Veterans Administration said, okay, well, if you can prove you were exposed to it, you can get coverage. Well, that's not fair either, because not many people know about it, and if you don't publicize it, they needed to publicize it. So I said, no, that's not good enough. You need to, and I explained to them how they could, if you were in certain units that were stationed above the MGM River and drew hostile fire pay, which we did when we were above the river, extra $65 a month, then it should be presumed that you were exposed to Agent Orange. And finally, they adopted that. And this took me 3 or 4 years.
Wow.
So now the DMZ vets that were in the units that were stationed above the MGM River, where it was defoliated, are able to have the same presumptive exposure and have the same treatment and coverage that the Vietnam vets have. So I'm real glad that we were able to do that.
And that's where you got the nickname Bulldog, right?
Well, that came from a Soldier of Fortune magazine article. That's a long story. But yeah.
That's awesome. So you you fought for your country in Korea, which is amazing. And then whether we call it whatever, but I believe God used that to bring you back here and fight as an attorney for those same guys that were over there in the foxholes with you. That's really incredible.
I've got a friend named David Benbow who was the lone survivor of an ambush in November of '66 in the DMZ in Korea. And David was blown off a hill by an explosion, and the other 7 members of his patrol were all killed, and those that were just wounded were bayoneted by the North Koreans. So they bayoneted the wounded. David said they pulled a watch off his arm and took his rifle and took his helmet, and he was wounded and bleeding, but he played dead, and they didn't bayonet him. He doesn't know why, but he believed God let him survive so he could tell their story, and that God had a plan for him.
Yeah.
Anybody that's been in combat, and I really mean anybody, is going to say, why not me? Why did this happen to him? Why did that bullet find him and not find me? And you just wrestle with that, and you come to the best conclusion that you can about it, and that's the conclusion David came to. So,
yeah,
I know I used to have a dream. I had a buddy when Michael Romarchuk was killed on July 30th of '68. I wasn't with that patrol, and I was in a foxhole, but I'd been with them the 3 prior patrols. Those guys. In fact, I'd been paired up with Michael the 3 times, 3 prior patrols, and so I thought for years, why wasn't I on that patrol? I should have been with them. And I kept watching. I was in the foxhole watching the tracers go off out in a mile and a half away in the DMZ. And I couldn't do anything. And so when I had my reunion in '93 with the guys, some of the guys that were on that patrol, they said, David, you shouldn't feel guilty that you weren't there because you were doing your job somewhere else. But I would have this recurrent dream that the patrol would go out without me, and I couldn't find my rifle or my boots. They'd leave me, and I'd wake up in Statesville, and I'd be mad because I hadn't been there, and I'd be mad all day. Yeah. And I mean, every year, a couple of times a year, I'd have that dream. But after I found my buddies, after they said, it's okay, you shouldn't have been there, they forgave me, so to speak.
Sure, yeah.
And I had one more dream where the patrol went out. I went with the patrol, and the North Koreans came. We set up on a hill. Michael was killed up on a hill, and we shot and killed every one of the North Koreans in my dream. And I woke up and I felt great. That's what you're supposed to do on an ambush patrol. You're supposed to kill the enemy when they come. And I've never dreamed about it since. I just needed that forgiveness.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So.
Well, and so not only the Agent Orange and all of the things that you accomplished there, but almost around that same time, the hazardous waste incinerator was coming to Iredell County. And that was a battle in itself, wasn't it?
It was. That happened to be during the time I was president of the Iredell County Bar Association. So the SA9 site was at the on the county line of Rowan and Iredell County. So I got up with the Rowan County bar president, and I got up with Joel Harbinson, who was Alexander County bar president, and we had a series of lawsuits that we'd file one after another to get restraining orders and to get orders that would order the engineers and the folks from the state that were coming to test the property to stay off the property. And in fact, our lawsuit that Richard Phillips and I filed is still in place. There's still an order that says that they're not to go on the SA9 site and test it. It never was. We never did have that order removed.
That's awesome. That
SA9 site was on Longview, near Longview Road, near dairy farms, cattle, beef farms, silage, all kinds of hay, and it would have been awful spewing particles onto the grass that the cows would eat and it produced milk that children and us would drink.
Wow.
So it was an ill-conceived location for a hazardous waste incinerator site.
And so I've done a little reading about it, and I've heard you tell stories about it. I had no idea, and I was alive at the time, but a small child, so I just wasn't paying attention. But it was really contentious for a while, wasn't it?
It was very contentious. I remember going to a meeting, and Richard thought I was going to get into a fight because Richard Phillips, who was at the meeting with me, because somebody was complaining about these lawyers ain't doing nothing. And I said, wait a minute, I'm here. It's 10 o'clock at night. I could be home with my family. I'm not charging a dime for this. And we filed a lawsuit, and we're fighting for you. And so don't say lawyers are not doing anything.
Yeah, yeah.
And we but anyway, that smoothed over and we're fine. But I learned, and I don't think I think it's okay to say this. I learned that there was dynamite placed under some of the bridges up in that area, that the bridges were going to be blown up if engineers came to try to measure or test the property and so forth. There were dogs that police had and law enforcement had.
I remember you had told me about Judge Cornelius was livid when he found out they had dogs.
He was. Judge Cornelius, I'd gone to his office to get him to sign a temporary restraining order, which he did sign. But when he saw in the temporary restraining order request that there were dogs there, because people were protesting, my sister Sarah was one of them. They were locked arm in arm, singing "We Shall Not Be Moved," and so the law enforcement brought dogs in to break up the protesters. And when Judge Cornelius found that out, he immediately said, "We're not having this." And he picked up the phone and called the governor and said, "Governor, you got to call the dogs off. I'm not having dogs on my people."
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what an incredible, and you were ultimately successful.
Yes.
And the hazardous waste incinerator did not come to Iredell County.
That is correct.
And that's a victory in and of itself. So all these fights that you have been in, from Korea to Agent Orange to hazardous waste. But one of the things that I think is a hallmark of our firm and of your mentoring of me is that we only fight when we have to, and we avoid it as much as we can. And that's right. Kind of been what you've taught me, is we don't want to fight. So talk a little bit about that and how you've kind of built that as the way you practice law. There are some attorneys, when people call and say, "I want the meanest, baddest attorney in town," we're probably not your law firm.
Yeah.
We're here to get it done and get it done quick for you and get a resolution that's good for everybody.
Well, even though the Soldier of Fortune magazine called me a bulldog lawyer, that's only if that's necessary. Sometimes it is necessary to go to court. I understand that, and you do too. We understand that better than most people do. But if somebody's just looking for a fight and they don't want to talk or consider compromise or anything of that nature, then they've got the wrong law firm. Court is a very stressful and painful thing for the litigants. And there's usually a way you can compromise things, but not always. And we try to do that. First of all, when we draft documents, we do a lot of contracts and people setting up businesses and that sort of thing. We try to avoid fights. And how do you avoid a fight? Well, you learn through good law school like you went to and like I went to, and you learn from experience of practicing law like you've done for a number of years and like I've done, what problems people have had, and we try to avoid them by drawing up contracts that avoid these problems and address, well, what if this happens? What if that happens? What do you want to do? And so we try to avoid it. So a properly drafted legal document can avoid many of the fights.
Absolutely.
But if not, then we try to resolve it. I hope the other side gets the best lawyer they can, because a good lawyer usually, if you got a lawyer who doesn't know what he or she's doing, it's hard to settle a case. But if you've got a good lawyer on the other side, then usually two lawyers can settle something. Yep. At least we understand how the case is going to come out usually. But if you got to go to court, you got to go to court sometimes.
One of the things that I've told my clients as they come in, we're drafting agreements for a partnership or whatever, is, I've always told them that good fences make good neighbors. Everybody's always heard that.
Yeah.
Good agreements make good partnerships. It's the same thing. We draw the boundaries and say, here's where we're going to go, and we're not going to go outside of these boundaries.
Or to use another real estate analogy, good surveys make good neighbors.
Yes,
too.
Good surveys make great neighbors.
Yeah.
Get a survey.
Yeah.
So just a few years ago, you were also awarded the Citizen Lawyer Award. Tell us about what is that award?
The North Carolina Bar Association awards 5 a year maybe to North Carolina Citizen Lawyer. And it's based on the things that an attorney has done, not only in his or her practice, but also in the community. And so I was nominated for the award and was selected for that award. And I was very, very humbled, and because there are a lot of deserving lawyers that I know that have not received something like that. But it was a real humbling experience to get that.
That's awesome. Well, and speaking of awards, the Southern Prize for Literature, is that what it was?
Yes.
A published poet as well.
1995, I wrote a poem called The Flak Jacket about a middle-aged man who found his old flak jacket, which is an Army, like a bulletproof vest. It's not really bulletproof, but shrapnel.
Sure.
And he reached his hand into the pocket and felt some dirt that had come back from Asia in that flak jacket. And I wrote about that.
Yeah.
And won the Southern Prize for Literature.
That's awesome.
For that poem.
It's all these things kind of come together, and you just recently were at the State Bar celebrating 50 years in practice.
That was fun. I've been very fortunate health-wise to be able to do that. I know I've had some younger lawyers say, well, gosh, I hope I'm not practicing law when I'm your age. And, if you don't want to, that's fine. I hope you're not too if you don't want to. But I hope you're healthy enough that if you want to do it, you can.
Absolutely.
And so I've been very blessed with good health and a wonderful community. I love Statesville.
Yeah.
I mean, I grew up here. I could live anywhere in the world I want to, and I want to live here. I think it's a great place. I know on my birthday back in December, I went to places. I just intentionally went off by myself and went to places that meant something to me. I went to the home where I grew up on Queens Court and just walked around the neighborhood a little bit. And I went to First Presbyterian Church and walked around there, and went to our law office and walked around our law office a little bit, over at Statesville High School, and then I drove out to a farm I used to own out off of Sharon School Road, a little hobby farm, and spoke with the owner and just walked around and had lots of good memories. But there's so many good memories here for me. And in fact, this morning I was driving in listening to a country song, and I don't remember the title, but about a guy that was offered some money for his farm, and he said, why would I sell the farm? I mean, I've got, my wife is buried here. I remember my granddaddy, I was on a tractor with my granddaddy here. There's no amount of money that I would sell that farm for. And here I've got a farm of Iredell County. I love Iredell County.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
It's a great place to live. So in 50 years of practice here in Iredell County, you've got to give us, there's got to be, what's the one story that sticks out, lawyer story that you're like, man, y'all got to hear this story, this, whether it's funny or crazy, or what's the craziest thing or most memorable thing you've had happen as an attorney?
I'm going to give you two.
Okay.
I was representing a shoplifter in criminal court. Judge Sam Cathy, who was a high school classmate of mine who grew up in First Presbyterian Church with me, same age, youth group, all that, was the judge. The witness for the drugstore was Larry Marlin, who also is a classmate of ours who grew up in First Presbyterian Church, and he represented Revco. So I asked, on cross-examination, I asked Mr. Marlin if I could see, if he had the goods that he said my client took. He said, yes, I do. I said, may I see them, please? He said, yes, you can, and he threw them across the courtroom at me. I looked at Judge Cathy. I was so surprised. Judge Cathy had his hand like this, was just about to bust out laughing. I just about bust out laughing. But Larry was mad. He was mad, and I understand it, because I was representing somebody that stole from him.
Yeah.
So I went over, picked up the stuff, took them back to Larry. I said, no further questions, Your Honor. The second story was during the SA9 fight. I was representing my brother Ted and his wife Pam, who were expecting their son Clint. And they lived right in the middle of the SA9 site. Well, the Attorney General's office had sent a lawyer over to defeat our restraining order that we got in ordering the folks to stay off the property. And one of the reasons that we had for getting the restraining order was that Pam was ordered to be on bed rest because she was expecting Clint, and the commotion and the helicopters going over and the news crews and the highway patrolmen coming with the lights going, the dogs, the protesters, just had her all, as you can understand, anxious.
Absolutely.
And she was nauseous and dizzy and just had to go on bed rest. And so that was one of the reasons that we wanted the restraining order, to keep people off their property. Well, Ted was testifying about that, and the Attorney General cross-examined Ted and said, well, now, Mr. Benbow, you said that your wife is anxious and she's nervous and is sick at her stomach and she's on bed rest, and this is all due to the commotion with the SA9 site. And she said, well, your wife's pregnant, isn't she? And Ted said, yes, she is. And she said, well, it's a lady lawyer. She said, how do you know the pregnancy isn't causing this? And my brother said, well, I've got the same symptoms and I'm not pregnant. And so the judge granted our order, and that's the order that's still in place.
That's awesome. That is just gold, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Sometimes you get that answer and you're just,
yep,
that's it.
That's it.
Case closed. Case closed. So as you're thinking about, as we close down this episode, and you're thinking about, we've talked a little bit about you winding down and maybe starting to slow down your practice.
Right.
As you think about that and looking back over your career, what would be maybe one or two things that you would like to leave as a legacy in the law community, to say, this is what I want to be remembered for, this is what I want people to keep doing in my honor?
All right. Well, first of all, you and I and Daryl Davidson have a 5-year plan, and we're 4 years and 1 month into that 5-year plan. I've had several people come up to me in the last, couple of weeks, especially since a newspaper article about my 50 years. They thought I had retired, and I explained, no, I haven't retired yet.
That's right.
I'm going to retire at the end of this year, December 31st of 2024. And so if you need to see me for a will or for some estate planning or for some advice or something, come on in the next 11 months.
Sure.
Because I'm not going to do it after that. And also, I want to point out that we have 5 lawyers in our law firm, and each of them is competent and a good lawyer and can help with different areas of the law. And so a lot of my clients I'm wanting to introduce to a lawyer in the firm or several lawyers in the firm that can help them when I'm not here in 2025. So as far as a legacy, I would like to think that I was an honest lawyer. At the Army reunion I had, we went up to Boone, my Army buddies and I and their wives, and one of them came back with a gift for me, and it was a sign that said "honest lawyer," and I've still got it in my office.
You do?
He called it an oxymoron, and I know a lot of people maybe there's some justification for it, think that lawyers are devious and tricky and not honest and that type of thing. But I don't want to be remembered that way. And for the most part, I feel that the lawyers I have dealt with have been honest, have been forthright, and have represented their client zealously. You can represent your client zealously and be honest. And so I would want to be remembered as an honest person that would do what he said he would do, and would if I can't achieve the results that you want, I want to be able to tell you that. I don't think we're going to be successful, but in front of a jury, who knows? But I'd like to be thought of as somebody who was there to help when somebody needs help.
Yeah. Well, we've kind of seen that in just the history that we've heard today. With you've helped your country, you've helped your fellow soldiers, you've helped your community by keeping this hazardous waste incinerator out, and countless clients who have sat across your desk from you, and you've heard their stories and helped. And that's really what I think this job comes down to, is just we're here to help.
Yeah.
And so whatever folks are going through, oftentimes the hardest, most unimaginable things, And that's what you've taught me is we're here to help. We're here to serve. When those people come through that door, they're suffering or dealing with one of the most tragic or awful things we can imagine. And they're there for our help.
Yeah.
And that's what we're there to do.
Yeah.
So thank you for being an amazing mentor. Thank you for the impact that you've made in the legal community here in Iredell County. And really, when you think about especially things like the Agent Orange coverage and things around the world, the impact that you've had. So thank you.
Thank you.
And
Sure.
it's been really an honor to sit and talk with you today.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you, Luke.
So you guys subscribe, check out our videos on YouTube, Facebook. We'll be putting these things out every week. So this week we're going to have David, but then we're going to have every attorney that's in the office do one of these so you guys can get to know us. Thank you so much for watching.